Told there
Oh,
we
there we go.
go. Now we're
Hello,
live.
everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome to Cheri and Cathe's Stitching Hour.
Exactly. Exactly.
I'm in cool but sunny San Francisco area where it's like 70 degrees and you're at what, 110?
I'm at least 110. I think it's over 110 today. It's been over 110 for the last week. It's been awful. But
Ugh.
it hasn't been 120. So
Well, that's good.
I'll take it. I will take
Okay.
it.
I've just got that up so I can see any comments. Okay.
And
I think we're good.
you can probably hear in the background we have a puppy and he's not happy that he is corralled at the moment and not getting attention. So unfortunately I can't put him on mute. And it's too hot to put him outside. Otherwise I'd have poked him outside, but it's just when it's 110, I can't have him outside. But he's a
No,
corgi.
that would not be a good thing. It's fine.
Yeah.
We'll cope with the puppy.
Yep. And I may have a cat walk across my lap. For anybody that's followed me on my videos, you've seen that happen before because I have 4 of them. And I just had the kitten in my lap, but he's on the bed sleeping now. So
He's
the bigger
decided that
cats
the
aren't as likely to get
entertainment
up
is
here.
better elsewhere.
Yes. Yes. Nap time. And my grandson is running around. So, and he's 5. So you may hear him pop in. So it's not a calm, quiet day in the Eddington household, but we do what we got to do.
Yeah. Let's see. So today we wanted to cover what we're stitching for the month. I was going to show
Yep, there he
another
is.
sample that I've done. Hey there.
This is my
And
grandson.
who are you?
Caden. No, you can't climb up here, honey.
Hey,
This is
Caden.
my grandson, Caden. He's going to run away now. He just realized he was on camera and he's like, nope, I'm out of here.
Oh, that's pretty
All right.
funny.
So let's talk about what you worked on. I love the samples that you did.
So I started working on the rose, the bouquet that I had done. I'm going to switch the main screen for a second.
Good.
So this is the original sample that I did on the. It helps if I turn it the right direction.
Yep, there we go.
I guess it doesn't really matter. They're disembodied flowers anyway. So that's the bouquet, and that's on the 38 count legacy. And so I wanted to give you a sense of what it looks like on a denser count. So this is the 45 count. So
look at the difference.
This is the 38 and this is the 48. So it does shrink it quite a bit. The color is the same color. But the denser it gets, it kind of looks a little bit different, but it is actually pretty close to the same color.
Slightly darker, but it's not. They're really
they're really close.
Good at is their dye lots.
Well, what happens is that because you've got more hole space in a 38 than in a 45, is that you end up with this thing where this appears darker just because there's less light going through it. Exactly. So it always looks a little bit different. But I thought that would be useful for people who wanted to be able to see what it looked like. Here, I'll do it the other way too. Actually, it's probably easier sideways. So you could see what it looks like to get a sense of the difference in the counts, because I know sometimes that's a little harder to tell if obviously most people aren't buying 2 counts of fabric.
Right.
So this gives you a better sense of
the difference in size based on what you might want to see on. Exactly.
Yeah, so that you can kind of tell. And this is actually, the 45 count's actually pretty easy to stitch on.
And what floss did you use on each of them?
So this is the 38 count is SWA 100. So this is SWA 100, and this is Swasserfine.
Okay. I have used Swasserfine on 46 count before, or excuse me, I used Tudor on 46 count, which is
Yeah, close to the
similar
same
in
weight.
density
Yeah.
to Wasserfein. And it's
Yeah.
lovely.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, I
absolutely
like it
lovely.
because even though you don't get the quite the same density of coverage as you do with the SWA 100, I just find when I'm stitching it, it's smoother. I'm not thinking about as much with the plumpness of it showing the holes.
Right.
And I just happen to like the look. So, and I still think that it gets a nice, you still end up with a nice, with nice coverage.
You do.
It is a little bit more sparse than it would be with the 100 because this is a 130. And so it's 30% thinner. And so I just think it gives a nice look to it. So, but you know, another way for people to kind of tell what it looks like when you're stitching on the same
Right.
stuff with different counts. So
Oh,
do
I
you
love
want
it.
to go over
Yeah, let's go
stitching
over
stuff
whatever.
and then we'll introduce Elizabeth?
Yes. So what we're stitching on this month is page 2. So here's page 2. We've got a little bit of border. We've got some over one with our words. We get to stitch a little bird head and some more of our little curly cues from our vine. So again, it's not as heavily covered this month as last month's was. So it shouldn't take quite as long to stitch except for that over one. That over one slows us down just a little bit. But this was last month. And as you can see, there was quite a bit more stitching, I think, involved in
Yeah,
last month
definitely more stitches.
than in this month. So yeah, so I have taken the first, I set it up for the first couple of stitches, but before we sit and stitch, let's take a look at Elizabeth. She's amazing.
Okay, so for everybody who didn't know about this, a few months ago, actually last year, Nicola sent me a note and said she had seen a sampler come up for auction that looked almost the same as Sarah. And I wasn't at a point in time where I even had the brain power to think about doing anything about it. And so it ended up getting sold from an auction house to a antique dealer in, I think, Yorkshire. So they put it up for auction, up for sale on eBay in, must have been maybe April.
Right.
And I gave them a really low ball bid in April, and they were like having none of it. And so I stewed on it for a couple of months and decided I kind of knew where the end point was that I would be okay with. Not that I really wanted to pay that much, but I would
Right.
be okay with.
Right.
So I got them to come down quite a bit. I came up quite a bit. And so I bought her, and she has arrived, and she is enormous. So I'm going to hold
She's
her
a
up.
big, beautiful girl.
So she's stitched on 25 count. I'm going to lean this and then sit this down for a little bit. I'm going to lean my camera forward. It's a little harder to see just because of the way the light reflects in here.
That's okay. That right there is great, Cathe. Very little reflection.
So she's 21 inches from side to side, top to bottom, without the frame. She's 28 in the frame. She stitched on 25 count or thereabouts.
Yeah.
It is a linen, and she stitched 98% in wool. So almost all of it's wool. There's only a tiny bit of it that isn't. And I'm going to actually set her down and then show you which parts it is, because then I can do it holding the camera.
Right.
Yeah. So this is, so the part that actually looks the worst in this is the letters, because this was all stitched in black wool, and it has, like, in here in the year's draw, it's almost completely disintegrated. It's not quite gone, but it just basically bled into the background, which is interesting because the one at the bottom where her work, her year, is actually not black. It's actually like a really dark kind of gray green, and it did not
Okay.
disintegrate near as much. There's a little bit, but not really much of any.
It must
She's
have to do
got,
with how caustic the dyes were, based on
that's what I'm
what was used
assuming.
in the
Yeah. I mean,
dyes.
because I know that black in particular is always really hard for it to stay stable in a lot of the older samplers, and I'm assuming it's because of the what they use to make the black dye with,
Right.
that it tends to eat through the thread. And but that's the only part that looks kind of wonky. The rest of it actually looks okay. She has a different verse here. It's not the same one that's in Sarah.
Right.
Elizabeth has her name and her work, and she was 10 years old, so she's 2 years younger than Sarah. This is also 1841. Nicola researched her. We believe that they went to the same school. They lived in the same village. That was probably kind of a good-sized village, small town. It's a suburb of Leeds now, and it's where a lot of the Industrial Revolution factories
Right.
were really being built up, and both of their fathers were involved in some kind of factory mechanical kind of work.
Isn't
So we
that
don't know whether or
fascinating?
not they went to the same school, but that's kind of the assumption. I haven't been able to track down if if there was a main school in Leeds at the time, or maybe it was
Right.
somebody private, but given that there's only 2 of them we've seen, we're not really sure. So almost all of this
Sorry, the kitten just
is
climbed up in
wool.
my lap. Yeah.
Oh, fun. So this is all wool in here. And then down in here in this flower, the really light bits are actually filament silk.
Okay.
So there's filament silk for the light bits in this one. There's filament silk for, let me get my iPad in the right, but in the light bits for this one. There's also filament silk in this motif and in the bird's eyes. So it's like she highlighted specific things. At first
Right.
pass, I thought maybe it was she tried to repair something, but I don't think so. I think this was intentional. I think this was to give it a bit of a highlight.
Well, and she maybe only had a little bit of silk that she could use. And so
That's
she
my guess.
chose to use it judiciously.
Yeah. And then up here in the top part, so this area is where, so Sarah's words take place more in this area. Hers goes sideways more. So
Okay.
Elizabeth has a crown. She has this little tree, and the bird that's elsewhere in the design is actually here. So this all is different than Sarah, and there is no bouquet in this one at all. And there's
Right.
also this cute little, let's see if I can get down far enough and slide it the right direction. There we go. There's also this cute little red dog
Oh, isn't it
that's
cute?
in here.
What do you
Yeah.
want to bet she had a little red dog or a little brown dog?
Yeah,
Or
she might have had some dog that had sort of a reddish cast, because it doesn't look like a lion. It really does look like a dog. If
right.
it had a slightly different shape, I would think maybe it might be a Welsh dragon, but it looks too much like a dog.
Right.
So yeah, just kind of cute stuff. So yeah, so
Oh,
that's the little dog.
fun.
But the border is the same.
Yeah, the border is
So
the same.
like 85-90% of it's the same. So the birds are the same. It's actually, I think, in a bit more stable shape than the antique that
For
Nicola
Sarah.
bought. That
Yeah.
Sarah, yeah, than Sarah's piece was, and I don't know whether that's because of they used. I'm assuming they might have used similar materials, or whether or not maybe Sarah's was stored differently at some point,
Exactly.
and that
Well,
made a
and there's no
difference as
telling
to,
over 200 years
yeah.
what.
Yeah, and then there's other sort of little oddball differences, like there's these little guys up in the corner. There's this this little motif.
Right.
And like I said, there's crowns on both sides of the wording. as opposed to just as opposed to the bouquets. And then, like I said, there's this triangular tree that we've seen in other things. In fact, isn't there one in Hannah?
Yes.
I think it's a similar tree to like what's in Hannah, which I think must have been a common motif at the time.
I think you're probably
anyway.
Right. Oh, well, she's just amazing.
That's Elizabeth. And people have asked if I'll charter. I will at some point when I have brain power to do it. They weren't actually done. Well, if they were done in white, it's faded or it's yellowed. I think they were actually done in a sort of yellowy color. It's almost a cream color.
Right.
So at some point I will take them and match them to current threads to see what's available. But she's on a background that's maybe somewhat similar to what Sarah was originally done in. She's got a little bit more of a brown cast to the fabric, but it's pretty similar, I think, to what Sarah's original piece is.
Right.
So,
one of the things that I love is that you purchased this over the Bristol weekend that we were at.
Yeah.
And it is so fun to have been there to see samplers stitched on 80 count or 72 count. Yeah. And you still have this stunning sampler of yours that's stitched on 25 count.
Yeah.
So,
which I think is pretty cool because I'm assuming that they, it's like the different schools, different access to different materials. So maybe where they were in the outskirts of Leeds, maybe this kind of fabric, maybe more of a homespun kind of thing, might have been a little bit easier to come by. And if you were going to do her in wool, you would want her to, you would need it to be a less dense fabric. You wouldn't want it to be quite as quite as fine a weave as what we would stitch with, or in fact what some of the Bristol samplers were done on. So but yeah, she's pretty.
Oh, she
is. At the moment, she's hanging out in my office at the shop because I'm trying to figure out where to hang her because she's so big.
Yeah, she is not a shrinking violet.
Hi. No. Actually, my staff asked me, it was like, are you going to take her home? It's like, I don't even have a wall at home that there's enough room for.
I know.
maybe in my bedroom, but that's probably pretty much the end of it. But I'd rather leave her at the shop. So I just have to figure out sort of how to reorient some things.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Oh,
but she's pretty.
Just amazing. Please don't do that, okay? Because that will disturb my ladies that are watching. Did you know we have people watching on this show?
Hey, Caden.
Yeah, we have people watching.
Hi, Caden.
Say hi. Say hi, Cathe. All right, I'm going to make the kitten get off my lap. He seems very content. Kitty. But he has to get off because he's laying on my stitching. Goodbye,
oh.
Kitty. There we go. Sorry, Kitty, but I love you, but you're just not welcome at the moment. I love you,
but I need to get to my stitching.
Yeah, now it's time to get to some stitching. But Cathe, she's amazing.
Yeah,
I'm so glad.
What's interesting about it is just being able to find another one that's so similar.
Right.
As opposed to, there are some motifs, but I mean, this is clearly whoever designed it taught both the girls.
Exactly.
And the question is, like,
know whether
are there
it was
more
a school
out
or
there we've never seen?
Instructor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it could have, like you said, it could have been a private instructor. Because they existed.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just so fun to maybe try and put ourselves in the shoes of these little girls when you realize that one was 10 and one was 12.
I know.
And they both did amazing jobs on these samplers. And they're just, that's the reason I love samplers. And I know I've said it before, but I love samplers because I feel like I'm walking in the shoes just a little tiny bit of these children, and in awe of their eyesight.
And I'm assuming that presumably maybe they both picked a verse that meant something to them, because
I would think
Elizabeth's is one from Ecclesiastes, and it's, remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth, while the evil days come not, nor the years draw nigh, when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them.
I love the fact that both of them are scriptural quotes, are taken from scripture. So it makes
as
you
opposed
think,
to,
was it a religious
sort
school?
Or possibly.
Or something along those lines, or a religious group that was teaching them. Or, again, it's all of the what ifs and ors and maybes, because we don't know for sure, but it's just fun.
Yeah.
Sorry,
yeah.
I'm buffering here.
The joys of technology.
Well, I've been having. Yeah,
So are you working? Too. So are you working on the border now?
I am working on the border.
So how are you doing the border in terms of color? Are you doing like a color and then kind of skipping and then moving and doing and then doing a color there?
That is kind of how I do it. Now, with this section of border right here that I'm working on, the green, because it changes color in here, I think I can count it properly and stick with that brighter green and complete all of that on one side, and then go down and complete all of that on the bottom of this particular piece. Because I'm only having to count over a couple of stitches, I should be able to do that without making mistakes. If I
did also want to mention too, because one of my customers who's not in the Facebook group sent me a note, so she hadn't seen Nicola's post about the bottom left corner, that this bottom left corner is in fact actually off a stitch, and that was the way it was. That's the way the model was done, because that's the way Sarah stitched it.
Right.
So if you're looking for it to match up, it matches up on the right side, but not on the left side.
Yes, and that's the way the antique was stitched. And one of the things Nicola and Sandy are so careful about is keeping things the way that the antique was done.
Yeah, I've gotten up because I'm actually come over here to turn Elizabeth upside down, so it's easier for me to see the bottom of hers, to see if I can tell if hers is that way.
Oh, good point.
The sampler kind of moves a little inside the frame, so if I turn it, I can sometimes get it to slide. When I got her, we thought that it might be the original frame. It's conceivable it might be the original frame, but it actually has plexiglass on the front of it as opposed to glass. So it was reframed at some point in the 20th century.
Okay.
But I don't know for sure yet whether or not the frame is original. No, it looks like, I'm thinking that looks like that might have just been a mistake that Sarah made. I need to look at the bottom chart here. Research on the fly.
Absolutely. Well, that's what makes it so fun, though, is we can make these comparisons.
Yeah, she uses kind of slightly different colors than what Sarah used.
Her colors didn't seem to be as peachy. They
No, they're
seem to,
definitely, they're more, a little more on the sort of yellowy brown end of the scale.
right.
So the border part where, so like in this part where it's really peachy,
Yes.
on Elizabeth, it's actually almost cream colored, slightly
Okay.
tan, but presumably that's because it's stitched in wool, and maybe that was what she had access to, different
Right.
from what Sarah had access to.
Well,
And it's
and
always possible too that whoever was teaching them said, okay, pick a couple of colors for the border.
that's possible.
Yeah,
It
it
may
is
be,
certainly conceivable.
well, and sometimes these girls stitched what the school provided for them,
Oh, yeah.
and sometimes they stitched based on what their family had on hand. And so maybe Elizabeth's family had a lot of wool on hand, where Sarah's family, now that's a good question though. I had never asked. Was Sarah's stitched in silk, or was
I
her
don't know.
stitched
I
in
need to
wool
ask.
also? We
I
didn't
need
ever
to
ask
ask.
Nicola that.
Yeah, I need to ask Nicola about that. And I am seeing some differences in the border. Now that I'm looking at her a little bit more carefully. So on so in the upper left corner, so up here where most of us started, these edges are together. You know, I mean, they're basically, they butt up against each other. That's not the
Right.
case with Elizabeth. Elizabeth's is
Okay.
off by about Elizabeth's is off by about 5 or 6 stitches. So she must have done some interesting compensation somewhere in the middle. So
Or
it'll be interesting
maybe they were
to
stitching
chart
on
that.
different count fabric, and in order to get things to line up, maybe they had to make some changes to the design.
Conceivable. Yeah, or she might have started in a different point, and then when she
Right.
got there realized she'd made a mistake someplace else, and that in the process of doing that, that she wasn't able to make it match up.
Yes.
You know, which is fine, because it's not like, because it looks like, because it's not symmetrical. So Sarah, the top and the bottom, so the top border and the bottom border, get it back. So the top and the bottom are basically the same.
Right.
So if you line up things, they all line up. That's not the case now that I'm looking at Elizabeth. The top border, it looks like it's slightly squished. Yeah, she definitely
Okay.
made a mistake in here somewhere, because at the bottom there's a bunch of corrections. It looks like she kind of, well, and that might be the case because she was 10 years old.
Well, and that's what I was
You
just
know,
gonna say.
2 years
2
younger,
years is
you're
a bit
kind of,
different.
you know,
Yeah.
kind of, as Aura says, I can't fathom that a 10-year-old could do this. I'm looking at this gone, okay, if I'd have made a mistake, I would have had to have gone, okay, what do I do now? And I
Well, yeah,
can't
because
imagine
their
a
teacher
teacher
isn't
telling
gonna
them to
want
take it out.
them. Yeah, they're not gonna want them to mess with it and take it
Correct.
out. That would have
Yeah.
wasted floss, which was precious,
Yeah.
and you just compensate. Um, and that's one of the things that I've learned. I try to compensate when I make a mistake as often as possible, unless I'm only taking out a stitch or two. Um, but at the same time, I don't want to waste all that floss either.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
expensive. I'm stitching in silks. It's
Yeah.
not
So Sarah isn't symmetrical left on the left and the right side. So if you look at for those of you who are with us or those who watch this later, if you look at the chart, I'm just doing it from the photograph.
right.
This side and this side are not the same. The top and the bottom are, but the sides are not the same. And that's because of the way the corners connect.
Right.
And so she's got different connection points in her corners. So it's almost like because in theory, this is square. It's almost like she flipped this.
Right.
So I'm wondering if that might be what the difference is that she flipped it. Yeah, kind of, maybe.
Is she,
I shall have to look at it a bit more.
Are the stitches all going the same direction on Elizabeth?
As far as I can tell.
Okay.
I'm not finding that she flipped it in that regard.
Okay.
And for, with the exception of the over one stuff, the wool part is done in something that's a bit heavier than crewel. It's not tapestry weight. So it's a little bit thicker than say modern day Appleton tapestry is. But I think what I might do is take one of the motifs and stitch it, try to match it and stitch it in wool. Because it's not like I don't have access to 25 count fabric. I kind of know where to find some.
True enough. True enough.
And I might try that just to kind of see what it looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, pull some 25 count Lugana, and that would be really interesting.
I'll do it with 25 count linen, because I got that.
Oh, you do have some of that. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have access to 25 count linen. I have access to 28 count linen, but I don't have access really to 25.
No, we've got 18, 20, 25, 20. I think we might still have some 26.
Okay.
Rachel was making 26 for a while, but Swagart's Dublin linen is 25.
Oh, interesting.
So
okay.
I think I'll do that, because I'm kind of curious to see what it would look like stitched with contemporary wool, to see sort of, what the texture would look like, because it definitely gives it a different vibe than the silk does.
Right.
And she definitely had some tension issues.
I would have tension issues on 25 count.
There's sections of the birds where it's like the stitches are just a little compressed.
Yeah, where they got pulled a little tight. And
yeah. And I'm assuming that was probably, I mean, I don't know whether or not they worked in a frame. Another question I'll have to ask Nicola if she knows whether or not Sarah's might have been stitched in a frame, or whether or not, like, you're doing yours in a hoop. I do mine in hands, which is why mine has all these wrinkly edges, because I just, so actually this brings up the point. So when we did our Hannah live last week, and we were talking about how people do it. So this is how I roll mine. So I just basically roll mine and hold it in my hand.
Yep.
Yeah, and I do that even with bigger pieces. If there's a lot of fabric, I'll use the little quilters clips.
Yes.
I can't think of their name at the moment. I'll use them if I actually have enough fabric.
Quick clip, is that what it's called?
No, but I'll think of what it is.
Okay.
But with a fabric like the 45 count, it tends to stay kind of slightly rolled anyway, just because it's such a dense fabric. So
right.
Yeah.
And I'm a scruncher. Yeah. I'm a grab it, squish it in my hand, and scrunch it in.
Yeah.
So mine's always a wrinkled mess.
So Audria wants to know, for the over one stitching, can you use 10 stitch using 103, or do you need to use something else? No, you can use 10 stitch for the 103. If you go look in the featured posts, Audria, you'll find my stitching samples. So if you go take a look, I did each of the samples. Actually, this is one of them. So this is one of let me get it in the right place on the screen. So this is one of I'm going to shift off of you for a second.
That's fine.
Cheri. So this is the 38 count. And this was my stitch sample in the red. So this is SWA 100, where my finger is. And for the over one on that one, I actually did 10 stitch.
Right.
Because you still get nice coverage, but it looks, when it's really packed like it is for the letters, it actually works pretty well.
Right.
But I've got pictures of all the different counts with this same layout. Ignore this little guy. With this same layout, so that you can see what it looks like. So I would say if you want to do that, yeah, not a problem. Just go ahead and do 10 stitch for the 103. You can do the letters in Swasserfine over one. If you're going to do it in on, say, a 40 or a 46 count, but I think you can certainly do 10 stitch just as easily. So what are you doing yours as full cross stitches for the letters, or are you doing them as 10? Oh, I lost your volume, Cheri. I can see you, but I can't hear you. Yep, we've lost Cheri's sound. I'm not sure. Oh, no, can everybody hear? Is it me? Can you hear me, Cheri? Okay, let me take my ear things out and see if maybe it's just me. Hang on. Okay. Let me stick them back in. Okay. Okay. Ara can hear me, but she says she can't hear you, Cheri. Do you want me to disconnect? Do you want to take your earpods out and put them back in? Yeah, Cheri, we've got your video, but oh, hang on. It's because so which one is the volume coming from? From your phone? From your stitching? I'm just checking to see that I have not muted her. Nope, I haven't muted her. Cheri. She's talking, but I can't hear her. I think she's lost me. Cheri. Cheri, we've lost your audio. Okay. Did you come back? Oh, that's weird. Yeah, I'm not getting your audio at all. I'm going to mute and then unmute you just to see if that will bring you back to the stream. Hang on. Okay, let's see if that worked. Okay, and I'm not muted, although I'm going to mute me. Well, yep. For some reason, Cheri, for some reason, I've lost the audio and I can't get it back. I'm going to send, for those of you watching, I'm going to send Cheri a text message because I need to let her know that I can't hear her. The joys of technology: when it works, it's great. And when it doesn't, sometimes it's a really a challenge to get it to pay attention again. Yeah, she's not hearing me. I'm not hearing her. That's kind of interesting. I wonder what's going on. Hey there. Are you wearing your ear pods? She's answering my question, guys. We're having a, oh, she can't hear me at all. Okay. Ara, can you still hear me? Let's see, timestamp is 2:42. Let's see. Well, let me tell her what I'm going to do. Okay. I'm just letting her know what I'm going to do. I'm going to drop her out of the stream for a moment. Okay. We're going to remove her from the studio. Let me add her back in. Okay.
All right.
Oh, there you are.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, I can hear you now too. I couldn't hear you either. That
Yeah,
was
that was weird.
All of a sudden, everything was just gone. I'm so sorry, ladies and gentlemen.
It's okay. It's okay. You know, we get there and, you know, we stitch along and then figure it out.
What I was pointing out is I am really, really good at making mistakes while I'm talking and stitching and doing this. And I did. I'm off by one right here. So this whole section is up by one. I'm going to leave it for now. I'll take it out later because that is not an area I can compensate.
Oh, true. Yeah.
Not and add the dark stitches, not add the dark teal green. So I will take that out later, but I'll just keep stitching. I'll go down and stitch the bottom of the motif. And hopefully this time I'll actually do it correctly and get it in the right spot.
So what I had asked before the sound dropped out, and I know you answered, but I couldn't hear you, was did you do over one for all of the lettering on the 56?
I am, yeah. So I am doing.
I mean, you're doing a full cross stitch as opposed to a 10?
I'm actually doing full cross because I'm doing the Swasserfine and the letters are fairly small. It's not too dense. I could do it as a tent stitch. I could have, and that would have worked fine. But because it wasn't coming across too thick, I decided to do it full cross.
Oh, okay. So do you get that sort of slightly raised feel to it since you're doing
a little
it
bit,
over
yes.
one? Okay.
A little bit where I don't get that as much in other areas, but I do get a little bit of a raised feel to it. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So have you had any issues with any of the colors so far kind of disappearing into the background a bit where you wanted to change them?
I haven't. I've been very happy with the colors. I know that we had some issues on Hannah with some people feeling like the color was disappearing. But no, I've liked all of the colors on here.
Well, what I found was stitching on the 46 in particular, so doing my little bouquet, is that this motif in here, the little rose thing, is that when I'm stitching it, it feels like it's disappearing. But when I actually lay it down and look at it from like a foot away, it stands out.
Yes. Yes. If you look at it
so
on
the proximity
out.
makes a difference as to
It does.
how it looks.
Well, and you
So
can even
Ara is
see, I'll pull
thinking,
this away, and you can
oh
see the
yeah.
roses on mine. They show up, it shows up great, even though it's a lighter tone on a lighter fabric.
Cheri's working on the 56 count.
Yes. I am
And Ara's
stitching on.
thinking of changing the yellow for the birds. What are you thinking of? What are you thinking of changing it to more of a blue or to something else? Because I love I've forgotten her name now. The person who's stitching the birds in the slightly blue cast.
blue
Those
gray.
are
Yes.
gorgeous colors. You're thinking of doing a gray. Yeah, I think that would be really pretty because if you're doing it on a color that has a slight gray cast to it, and the lakeside color, depending on the count, has a sort of slightly gray, almost lavendery vibe to it in the
Right.
background. And I think gray for the birds would be pretty as well. Yeah, I think that would be really lovely.
I agree. I agree. Well, and some people have wanted them to look more like turtle doves.
Oh
And
yeah,
wanted the
yeah.
color to look more turtle dove. And the beautiful
Oh,
thing is,
true. Yeah.
make it, make this your own. That's what we love to see. That's what we love to
Well,
see.
and the comparison that I'm seeing from, being able to look at the chart and then being able to look at Elizabeth is just the differences in color there too. Is the birds are a little bit lighter, they're more creamy color,
Right.
and some of the flowers are a little bit darker. It's like, again, I'm assuming it was what the two of them had to stitch with, and so they ended up with slightly different colors
Yes.
than if they'd have done them out of identical threads. But yeah,
That's
I will go back and ask Nicola. She posted at one point about the original, and I don't remember what she said about what the count was and what the thread was. But I'll if I can't find the answer to that question, I'll ask her, and then she can post her comment to that.
Oh, that'll be great. Yeah.
Yeah, I had thought about trying to bring Elizabeth with me to summer school, but she's too big.
Oh, no.
She
I
would
would
need
be a little afraid.
she would need two plane seats on her own.
Exactly. You
She's
would
just
have to
she's
unframe
a
her
little
and bring
big.
her in a roll.
Yeah, if I get when I get to that point, I don't think I'll have her. I'm not going to take her out of the frame by that point, but I may do that later and then go and then bring her and then have a conversation with Sandy at the attic
Yes.
about what to do with reframing her. Not because I want to replace the frame, because I actually like the frame that she's in, but what to do about like the museum glass, and do I need to be concerned about stabilizing the fabric at all in the back?
Right. Right. I can understand that. Well, and I would think you would want to get some museum glass in there, protect her from, I don't know if that acrylic leaches any
No,
acids
actually,
out.
acrylic is pretty inert.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the real issue for it is that it scratches. And
That's
so
true.
because it scratches, she actually does have scratches in the acrylic. So there's areas where it's not as clear to look through it just because of that alone.
Yeah, it does
Laura, I'm
stretch
not
easily.
sure. I'll have to ask Nicola that question as well. Laura wanted to know if it was charted from the back of the original. I don't think it was. I think it was charted from the front. In part because I know Nicola said that Sarah's original was in such a state that she's basically falling apart.
Yeah, she's
So they
very
tried to
frail.
handle her as little as possible. So I don't think that they charted her from the back. I think they charted her from the front. I
Yeah.
will be curious when I eventually take Elizabeth out of the frame and take her off the backing, as to whether or not her colors have faded a lot. Because I'm assuming that some parts of it may have, but it's wool, so it's kind of hard to tell.
You know, I have my antique sampler that I have is wool. And the wool, and it's from the mid 1800s. Um, that wool color stayed so stable from front to back. So I don't know whether she was just never exposed to any sunlight
Yeah.
or whether the dyes are just more stable when they're dyed in wool. But yeah, there was very little difference from
Yeah,
back
I
to
don't
front.
know. I'd have to ask somebody who actually knows a lot about dyeing, the difference between dyeing the stability of, say, mid or early to mid 1800s dyes that might have been used on wool versus cotton versus silk.
Right.
Because they might not have they might not have used the same things. They might have used different things. And how much a difference does it make with the natural lanolin that's in the wool for how it takes the dyes and keeps them versus, what happens with silk and cotton.
Yes. That would be really interesting. Be
Yeah.
interesting to have somebody on who knew that, and we could talk about that.
Yeah, have a conversation about that. That would be,
Yeah.
because I'm always interested in the technical aspects of it. The how is it that it's stayed stable, and what is it that made that more likely to happen with one thing versus another, and not just the whole, is it exposed to light and um, other kinds of environmental issues, but what's the case with the kinds of dyes, how they interacted with the materials, and did that make them more stable or less stable?
Right. Yeah, I see. I would be fascinated by that also. We might put some of our stitchers to sleep, but I think most of our stitchers would find that kind of discussion fascinating also. Um, because
so
again, I
um
love the
so for page 2, is there any recommendation? So are you recommending that people do the whole thing off to the all the way off to the edge,
whoops,
and
sorry.
do that partial of the Y, or leave that for the next section?
I'm going to leave the Y for the next section right
Okay.
here. And this motif here, I will probably go ahead and flip my page and complete it because it's not very much. But I
Oh,
don't
okay.
want
You're
to leave this horizontal or this vertical line right here with this little bit. That
got it.
creates a visual line. So I will complete this whole motif in
Okay.
for the month.
And just get that little tiny bit of the tendrils that are off on the next page.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, as far as this section of the bird, this is not a big deal because you don't have the issues with horizontal stitching stopping that you have with stopping with a vertical line.
Oh, true.
So I will, when I get over here to this color here on the bird, let's take a look at the next page. I will probably feather it. I Meaning instead of
Oh, got
stopping
it. Okay.
again with this straight line, I will stitch a stitch over, maybe stop a stitch back here, stitch a stitch over, so I don't end up with a straight line there. Because
Yeah,
again,
I like that you call it feathering. I call it zippering.
oh, zipper works. Yeah. that works.
Because I think of it more like, the teeth kind of going together, but feather works
Yes.
too. Yeah, because
Yeah.
then
So
that way you can reconnect them and not have straight lines that might cause you some sort of difficulty.
Yes. Well, you just don't want. I learned very quickly with one of my very first stitching projects. I stitched because I'm a page by page stitcher. That's how I stitch, and I did that with a big vase, and this big vase covered 2 pages, and I was stitching in particular with an over dyed cotton at that time. And
Oh,
boy, can you tell where I stopped on one page and picked up on the next page. In fact, I've never done anything with that piece other than I completed it and put it away because I just learned a lot from it. I called it my educational piece. But yeah, so that was where I learned that especially with overdyes, you never stop and create a horizontal line. That's always a bad idea. But it still can be a bad idea when you're dealing with solids because when you stop on that horizontal line, you get just a little bit of pull in those holes.
Oh, true.
And then when you start up on the other side, you're creating an opposite pull on those holes. And that creates this little slight visual horizontal shading kind of showing up. So you just be careful of that. When we get further in, when we get to the pages back here, if you have your book in front of you, if you look at like page 6,
where the density of the birds is.
Yes, where the density of the birds is, it's going to be really important that you feather or zipper in this finishing page line here. So it'll take a little bit, it'll be a little slower, it'll be some real thought process, but
yeah, I
think
I would
2 months.
Yeah, I think I would do it so that I would maybe leave this motif to do in the same month as this one, and then go ahead and do the other part of the bird when I'm doing this one.
Right. And that
kind of
is
balance it out a little bit differently.
Doable, absolutely doable. But again, when we get to page 6, that's 2 months of stitching because there's
that's a lot of
much stitching on this. Yeah. So you'll have plenty of time to kind of map out and figure out how you're going to stitch that so that you don't create a visual line on there. But again, I liked your idea of saving this part of the bird and maybe doing all of this in 1 month, because again, there isn't, when you do month 5 or page 5, there isn't a lot of stitching on that page.
Yeah,
not nearly as much stitching on that page.
So you could certainly add a little.
Yes.
Well, because you could even do it so that you do that in month 5 you do the bird and then maybe leave this motif for the next month. I mean, yeah, you could certainly play with it a bit.
Right. And that'll and that'll be personal preference as to how you want to do it. But just keep in mind as we're stitching through this beautiful, beautiful girl, to just pay attention to these motifs that are sharing from one page to the next so that you're not ending up with horizontal ghosting happening.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm just
that.
kind of sitting here looking at Elizabeth, figuring out that where she's positioned in the border is slightly different because of the way she did the lettering at the bottom.
Right.
So it's like she's moved up slightly, which I think is probably maybe also partly why the bouquet doesn't exist.
Right.
Because she needed to move the whole thing up to be able to compensate for that. So
Yeah.
And her bird bath is actually more sort of red and a greeny brown. It's not a terracotta kind of color.
Right. Right. Where this bird bath is much more terracotta.
Yeah. And the flowers in the border are actually more red.
On yours,
they're
yes.
less yeah, on Elizabeth they're a little bit less, they're not as peachy.
Right.
They're not as sort of rosy colored. They're definitely more of a red color.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, just, yeah, fun stuff. Fun stuff. So just enjoy your stitching. And again, anytime you have questions or concerns, post on the Facebook page, or you're welcome to message myself, or you can contact Needle in a Haystack, and Cathe can answer questions. Yeah. And if there's anything,
thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cathe. Appreciate it. And everybody have a wonderful month.
We'll figure out when we're going to do next month's. We might do it when I'm there for summer school.
We could. Absolutely, we could. Yep. So we'll figure that out, and we'll let you know, folks, when our next month's stitch along will be. But in the meantime, stitch away, have fun, and don't let the overone get to you. Just take it slow and easy, and it'll be done before you know it. And then it'll just be on to regular cross stitch throughout the rest of the project.
Yeah. So thanks, everybody. We'll see you guys in the Facebook group and anywhere else we run into, and we'll see you at some point next month.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.